Okay. It's time for another audio diary episode because there's this thing I've been on the edge of doing for months and months, and I have been stalling for a couple of reasons. One, waiting for a little more clarity about what this thing looks like. Two, and I really want to emphasize number two, got a lot of fear around it. This thing I want to make, this thing I want to do, I probably feel more fear about this thing than anything else I've made before. And I've made a lot of stuff. So, I mean, you'll see, you'll get it. I'll get into it. I think it's like hilarious and also perfect that I help people with fear and uncertainty for a living. Because the part of me, like the wise career coach part of me, knows exactly what's going on with me and exactly what to do about it. And, you know, my scared, squishy human self is, like it has as much fear and resistance as anybody else. Like just because I help people with this for a living doesn't mean that I'm immune to it personally. So I feel like I'm stalling and dancing around the thing I want to talk about instead of talking about it. So let's just get into it. Welcome to Careergasm. This is a place to help you find your way to feel good work. I'm Sarah Vermunt, and I help people navigate their careers. I'm a career coach, a best-selling author, and my work has been featured at places like Forbes, Inc., Fortune, Entrepreneur, and Fast Company. On this show, we talk about career navigation and career change, and specifically the human side of work, where the professional is personal. We have heartfelt, nuanced conversations about navigating your career, including all of the squishy feelings that come along with being a human at work. Thanks for listening. I'm glad you're here. I wish you could hear my heart beating out of my chest right now. I'm one of those people who, for whatever reason, I'm able to appear very calm on the surface, even when there's like a tiny scared animal trying to burst out of my chest. So yeah, very often I seem like I've got it together. And sometimes that is an illusion. So this is one of those moments. Wow, I just can't get started talking about this, but here we go. Okay. We need some preamble for me to get into this conversation. God, this is going to be so validating for those of you that have some fear around what you want to do, because I feel really vulnerable right now around just the fact that I'm struggling to enter this conversation. But here we go. Where to enter this conversation? Well, I'll just enter it head on. And for those of you who listened to my first audio diary episode, I think it was episode 9, there were already hints of this in that episode. But for those of you that don't know my backstory, I've been a career coach for more than 10 years, mostly helping people make career changes, helping people start businesses, some other things. Before that, I was a business professor. So I like to think of myself as a very practical, grounded person, but I'm also a very intuitive person. Like really what I do is I help people feel safe enough to explore the things they want. And that's really hard for a lot of people. And so that's been my career path so far. And 2 years ago, I started having clairvoyant experiences. So for those of you that don't know what that is, I started having visions and flashes of things. Just like images of things that it's almost like getting a little download or a DM from the universe. And for me, it usually shows up in the form of visions. And that started coming in pretty fast and furious about 2 years ago. And it was both awesome and like really disorienting. I wasn't sure how to make sense of it. I wasn't always sure how to interpret the things I was seeing. And so I elicited some help from some different people. So I sought out a lot of support from mentors of various kinds, people who've sort of like been a part of that world and understand that world for years and decades. Over the past 2 years, I've probably worked with maybe 7 or 8 people to really help me understand this thing. And I worked really closely with 2 mentors specifically. So it's interesting. My lovely little business Careergasm here has been buzzing along, business as usual. And I, loving that work, and I continue to love that work. And in the background, I've also had this really interesting deep dive that I didn't see coming with this clairvoyant stuff. And more recently, I also started channeling, which is getting direct messages from spirit. So we got a real interesting mix of things happening behind the scenes in terms of my own intuitive development. And it's been a journey. The clairvoyance thing, I'm a very intuitive person, but the clairvoyance thing, I didn't see that coming. And isn't that ironic? I didn't think that was something that was going to show up for me. And it just goes to show you how life is really and truly full of surprises. And sometimes you're just going to get some shit that really comes out of left field. So I've been on an interesting personal development journey for the past couple of years. And it's funny because personal development is my thing. Like really what I do in my work is I do personal development for your professional life. So I love personal development, but there was like a certain sphere of personal development that I was already pretty darn comfortable with. And then this clairvoyance thing drops in a couple of years ago. And so I've been developing more in that way, getting some really lovely mentorship and support, understanding it a bit more, developing more self-trust around what I see and how to interpret things. And so it is May as I'm recording this, and last summer I finally got to the point where I sensed I wanted to do something with it. And what I mean by that is like find a way to use this thing I've got going on. I'm reluctant to call it a gift because actually I think everyone has an intuitive connection that they can nurture. I don't think there are people who are like an intuitive and people who aren't. We can get into that at another time. But last summer I got to the point where I sensed I wanted to start using this to help people in some way. And until recently, I haven't like quite known what that would look like. And in some ways, I still don't know what that looks like. But I'm getting the sense more and more that it's just time to start. You know, you've heard that saying, like, you know, like build the plane as you go. Like that's kind of the vibe I'm getting around it. So I've been in incubation mode with that feeling for the past 10 months or so, sensing strongly that I want to do something with this, but not really knowing what that looks like. And for the most part, that incubation phase has felt really good for me, really safe for me to just sort of like be with my ideas and my notions and my little, the whispers and nudges I always talk about, just to sort of sit with those for a bit. But it's interesting, over the past month or two, I have felt a really strong, for whatever reason, a really strong internal push to get this thing going. Even though I still, in many ways, feel like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like, I don't quite know what this thing is. So, you know, it's interesting with that incubation phase. It's like, yes, an incubation phase is necessary, but at some point that egg's got to hatch, right? Like, the incubation phase can't last forever. And so very soon I'm going to have this thing that was like a tiny little embryo and an egg, and it's going to be like exposed to the real world soon. So let me tell you a little bit about this thing. Still feeling quite fuzzy. Honestly, still feels a little bit like a half-baked idea, but I'm going to share anyway, because this is an audio diary and these are the thoughts that have been running through my mind. It's interesting. Last August on a camping trip, I got the name for something. And the name, I'll have to explain it a bit. The name for this thing I'm going to make is Psychic Normies. It's going to be a place, some sort of community for intuitive people with day jobs, because intuition is for everyone. And maybe I should start by defining what I see as a psychic connection. A psychic connection is just sensitivity to energy beyond what we can observe with our physical senses. It's our connection to spirit or universal energy. And I really like that sort of like softer, broader definition, because there might be a few of you out there who hear the word psychic and kind of like get that sort of like cheesy image of like the crystal ball kind of thing. That's not quite what I'm talking about. But I have sensed that this Psychic Normies thing that I'm going to be creating, like, I really want to create a community. How do I explain this? I want to create a community to help people nurture and develop their own intuitive connection, whether they feel it's big or small. Because, you know, different people are connected in different ways and have different comfort levels and different experiences with that. But I especially want this community to be for people who, like, don't necessarily identify as, like, psychic, for example, or clairvoyant. Like, their identity doesn't lean in that direction. Like, we're talking about, like, your accountant, soccer moms, like, literally, like a regular Joe kind of person. Because I really want to normalize that everyone has access to the psychic or intuitive part of themselves. And we all just fall in different places on that intuitive spectrum. So very soon, I'm going to do something that feels a little bit crazy to me and honestly scares the living shit out of me. But I know myself, and when I get these nudges, like, I gotta follow up on them. Otherwise, I end up feeling small and constrained and stagnant. So very soon, what I'm probably going to be doing, is that true? No, it's not probably. Very, very soon, what I am going to be doing is I'm going to be sending out a little email to my email community. I have a really lovely email community. Like, I have so many people in my email community that have been with me for like 10 years, like following my stuff, supporting my work. So I feel really safe in my email community. So that's why I'm going to sort of start there. I'm going to be sending out an email to my email community that's just like, hey guys, I know I usually talk to you about career stuff, but here's what's going on. And I'm just going to tell them what's been going on for me and invite them into this little community called Psychic Normies, and actually invite them to create it with me, because the truth is it's still a half-baked idea at this point. There's a couple of things I sense I want to do with the community, but because it is a community, it makes sense to me to feel it out with the people who want to be a part of the community. So there's two things I know are going to be a part of this. One is this is going to be a place for me to share some of the clairvoyant visions I've been having. And maybe I should pause and just tell you a little bit about that. Sometimes people who have clairvoyant experiences, they might be the kind of person who like receives a message for the person sitting beside them, or can receive, they might do, for example, what they call a reading for someone who asks a specific question, and they can sort of like get answers from spirit, that sort of stuff. That's not quite what's going on with me. For whatever reason, I tend to get, and this feels more complicated to me, I tend to get visions and messages about collective stuff, like collective, global, future-oriented stuff. And it's hard to know what to do with that, right? If for the past 2 years I had been having visions, images, messages coming through me that were for specific people, I would maybe want to build this in the direction of like doing readings for people. But that's not how this is developed for me. For whatever reason, I tend to get global, collective, future-focused stuff. And I think that's why I've been sitting on this thing for 2 years and trying to understand it more, because I care very much about how anything I might share will impact the people I'm sharing it with. Sometimes people have, often people have a lot of fear about future-focused things. And so I've needed this time to become quite steady in my understanding of things, and really in integrity about how I might share some of these things. So I'll probably be sharing both some of the visions I've had with my community, and also some of the newer channels I've started doing. I'm not going to get into talking about channeling too much today because it's quite new for me, but I know that if I build this community, that's going to be a part of it too. And so I'm getting this push, this nudge that it's time to start this community, even though like the details still feel quite fuzzy. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So that's one of the things I want to do with this community, but because I want to start it as a community and not necessarily as like, I don't know, like I don't want to just be like a creator around this thing or somebody that people follow. Like I really like the idea of everybody bringing their experiences and their gifts and their questions and their curiosity to the table. And I think one of the things I'd like to do in this community, maybe not right away, but like quite early in the process, is having a couple of community members share some of their gifts and experiences to sort of share with the group and help other members of the group nurture their own intuition in different ways. Because here's what I've learned in the past 2 years. Anytime I start to feel safe enough to maybe share my experiences with someone, gosh, a lot of the time, like easily more than half of the time, that person will respond with an experience of their own. It's almost like I become the safe person for them to share some sort of spiritual experience they've had. But I've noticed it's like everybody has their own flavor of an intuitive experience, if you know what I mean. So like there's not just one way that this can show up for a person. And so the community element, I think, could add a real richness. So that is the vision I have so far. I'm not going to be charging for it right away. I'll probably just offer it as like a free community thing for a couple of months, because it's like the way I'm building this is so different than everything else I've built. Like, I am such a, like, have your shit together kind of person. Like, I love to have everything done and organized and polished before I put it out in the world. And I actually think that's one of the reasons why I've been sitting on this idea for so long. It's like I've been waiting for that kind of clarity, and it's just not coming. So I'm getting the sense that this is something I'm supposed to build with community. But everything else I've made in Careergasm for the past 10 years has very much been like quite polished when I put it out. And this this just isn't that. You know, it's interesting to be more than 10 years into my work, this phase of my career journey with Careergasm, and to be in a position where I've got this like a real vulnerability around making something again. It gives me so much empathy for my clients, actually, particularly my business development clients, because, you know, me 10 years ago certainly had some fears around putting Careergasm out there. But that was a long time ago, and I've settled into like a comfortable little flow with my work for quite a while. And so having this thing come out of left field is it's a real stretch for me, let me tell you. And also I don't know how this is going to fit into my work. It certainly doesn't like fit under the Careergasm brand that I've built for 10 years. Right now, it just feels like a passion project. But it's so funny. I always tell my clients about the importance of dabbling and trying things. And so the beautiful and annoying thing about being a career coach is like when I'm in that position, it's like, well, I really got to take my own medicine here. I gotta do the toe dip. I gotta do the dabbling. So even though I still feel like this is quite half-baked and I don't know what the hell I'm doing, I think I just need to start. I think I need to do some sort of toe dip and trust that if I do a toe dip, I will get more information and I will get more clarity. It's kind of like what I talk about sometimes when I talk about the difference between, you know, in career navigation, we always wish we would get exact GPS coordinates for the next thing. But really what we have to work with is just like a compass, which just points us in a general direction. And then we have to start moving in that direction. And as we go, more is revealed to us. We get more information as we start doing. So that's what I've got to do. And I have all kinds of insecurities about sharing this side of myself. You listened to the opening of this episode of the podcast. I was a hot mess just trying to start this conversation with you. And I'm just alone in my office with a microphone. But I do have all kinds of securities about sharing this side of myself for a couple of reasons. Like, you know, I'm afraid I'm going to lose credibility with some people. And I understand that I will. Like, it's not just a fear like that might happen. Like, there really is still, not as much as, let's say, 20 years ago, but there's still quite a bit of stigma around intuition, clairvoyance, psychic connection, that sort of stuff. There's still a lot of eye rollers out there, right? And so I'm not especially psyched about losing credibility and putting myself in that vulnerable position. You know, I absolutely know that there will be some people who think I've gone off the deep end. And I also know, because this is just, I just know how this works. I also know that there will be some people who feel drawn closer to me because of this, because they have that connection themselves, or they just really respect that I'm brave enough to like put this stuff out there, even though my credibility as a career coach might be called into question by some people. So I get that there's a trade-off there. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to lose some people. And I sense and I know that some people will be drawn closer to me because of this. So that's the trade-off. But then there's also like real risks, like actual tangible risks here. And I'll tell you one of them that has really been on my mind and is one of the main fears I have about this. I have worked very hard with Careergasm to build a lot of great relationships with media outlets, with big publications, with television and radio networks on like a national level. And I'll just tell you the specific fear. There's a part of me that's like, well, is CBC gonna still want to call you for those national interviews you do about career stuff if the producers and reporters there know or find out that now you're also this intuitive clairvoyant lady? Unsure. Maybe I'm underestimating the open-mindedness of those people, but it's a genuine concern I have. And, you know, those media connections I have, it's essentially free marketing for my business. So it's not like putting myself out there in this way is just about worrying what people will think of me. You know, it's possible that it might have real implications for my business, depending on how people receive this. And also, like, maybe I don't need to overthink it. Like, it's totally possible that this won't even be something that's on people's radars. So it's interesting. There's some risks if I do this, but there's also risks if I don't do it. I am always telling my clients, and I know I've talked about it here on the podcast, there's also risks with not doing something, and we have to do balanced risk assessment. So I've just gone through the risks associated with moving forward with this. But, you know, like for me, the risks associated with not moving forward with this is that I just know myself, and I am someone who, if I intuitively feel I am meant to do something, like if I feel that intuitive nudge in a strong way, I have to do it because it feels really bad for me if I don't. And I can give you a couple of examples. Back when I was on the academia track, working as a professor, right at the tail end of my PhD, for 2 full years, I was in that world for 4 years, but for the last 2 of them, like, a part of me knew I was not supposed to be there. I did not want to be there. I was having all sorts of health problems. I felt like, you know, my life force was slowly leaking out of my body. I was getting sick. I was deeply unhappy. And that's because I wasn't listening to the part of myself that knew I needed something different. So I'm just one of those people, and really I think we all are on some level. I'm just one of those people who things don't go well for me when I don't follow up on the whispers and nudges. And that is sometimes both a blessing and a curse. So there's one example. And then also, like, more recently, I have lived in Toronto for the past 2.5 decades. And I got a very, very strong intuitive nudge that I was just supposed to uproot my entire life and move to a small town about 2 hours outside of Toronto. And there was really no logic behind that. I hadn't been looking to leave Toronto. There was just this place that was drawing me. And I did it. I uprooted my entire home and life and business and relocated just based on a feeling because the feeling was so strong. And it would have felt bad if I hadn't let myself do that. So I know how this thing is going to play out if I don't follow up on it and if I don't get brave and just let myself do it. So I'm just going to do it. I also know this, and you'll probably feel that this is true as well in your own experience. I really believe that the universe rewards action. And it loves when you've got skin in the game. It's almost like when you're willing or brave enough to actually take an action on something instead of just thinking about it. It's almost like the universe is like, okay, she's ready. We're going to give her a little more support for this. We're going to send her some more breadcrumbs. Okay, she's serious about this. She's not just thinking about it. Here we go. It's funny, you know, this is so cheesy, but you know, what's coming to me right now is it's almost like the universe is like, when you finally put some skin in the game, when you're finally willing to take action, it's like the universe is like, do you know that Shania Twain song where at the beginning of the song it's like, let's go girls? I kind of think taking action towards the things you feel drawn to but scared of, it's like the universe responds in that way. It's like, okay, she's ready. Let's go, girls. And like, then the synchronicities happen. Then you make a little more progress. Then you get a little more clarity. I really do believe that. And I'm holding on to that a little more, a little more tightly than I usually do, because I'm in that phase with this myself, with this idea that I want to bring to life, that I have fears about, but I feel a really strong pull towards. So that's it. That's where I am these days, in this scared, excited a place. And, I know this episode has been about me because it's an audio diary, but I always like to leave you a little something to think about at the end of these episodes. Maybe you could think about a whisper or a nudge that you've been feeling, especially if it's one that scares you. And this week I would just encourage you to maybe take a toe dip yourself. Maybe start softening some of the edges of the fear around that. Or maybe let yourself feel the full-blown fear and just consider doing it anyway. Food for thought. Thanks for hanging in there for this one. I appreciate you being here. I'll see you next time. Hey, I'm still here. If you're not already a part of my email community, now would be a really good time to sign up, because, as I mentioned, I'm going to be sending out the invitation for this Psychic Normies community to my email community first. And if you want to explore your own intuition in community with others, or even if you just want to hear about my experience with some of the visions I'm having and stuff, that's where I'll be sharing that. And I'm going to be doing that real soon, because here's what I know. I'm quite scared to do this, so I just need to rip off the Band-Aid. So that's going to be going out real soon. So you're welcome to join me there. I will put a link to join my email community in the show notes. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time.